Hey Greyhounds! As we wait for the 4th season of Ted Lasso, let's remember pop culture references and Easter eggs from its first 3 adorable seasons. Season 1, Episode 5, Timelines. Someone must be a musical fan at the writing team of Ted Lasso, as at the beginning of the episode we get Ted referencing another old musical, in addition to West Side Story that he mentioned an episode ago. This time, it's the old musical Oklahoma, a fantastically successful Rodgers and Hammerstein musical from 1943 that was based on an even older play that chronicles the courtship between farm girl Laurey and her 2 suitors, Curly MacLaine and Judd Rye. The play was turned into a film in 1955, and more recently, in 1998, Hugh Jackman starred in its West End revival as Curly. I'm guessing he's a good suitor. Ted even mentions a couple of songs, while Rebecca, clearly not a musical fan, mentions Shall We Dance, which is from The King and I, and not Oklahoma. Although, close enough, that's also a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical from that era. This is the episode in which Ted's family visits from Kansas City, and we see that Ted, when playing with his son, mentions the Field of Dreams paradigm, which is a reference to the classic Dead Dad film with Kevin Costner from 1989, in which a voice tells Kevin Costner to build a baseball field on his farm in order for him to play with the ghosts of baseball legends and the ghost of his dead dad. I paraphrase. I believe it's the most American of films, and curiously, only the 3rd baseball film Kevin Costner ever made, and only his 2nd baseball film to have the word dreams in it. In Chasing Dreams, this 1982 largely forgotten film, probably for good reason, Kevin Costner had a small part, and certainly wasn't the protagonist as the poster suggests. They just tried to capitalize on his fame later on. Like, he didn't even have that haircut in the film. At the beginning of the episode, Ted tells his players how he leaves his peanut butter open in the kitchen counter so that he can dip his finger in it when he passes by. And we indeed see him do that later in the episode. Richmond is actually 4,338 miles away from Kansas City and not 4,438 miles away, as Nate observes. I bet you always wanted to know that. In the brief moments of family bliss that Ted gets in this episode, we see that he's wearing a t-shirt from his old friend's 3KC brand that was more prominently featured in episode 1. Another sneaky Kansas City reference is when Ted talks about his art teacher, Miss Scanlon, who apparently actually was Jason Sudeikis' art teacher in Brookridge Elementary. We have also a brief shot of Killy on a Coffka vodka advertisement, hanging out with a lion. And you may remember that from the episode 2 photoshoot that Killy was doing when she had that chat with Ted that got both of them in trouble later. I do think that the talk that Ted, Beard, Nate and Higgins have in the episode on the subject of marriage probably constitutes the first unofficial meeting of the Diamond Dogs that will be later formalized in the show. When Coach Beard tricks Ted into saying that Ronald Reagan was the US president in the 80s, Beard does an impression of Doc Emmett Brown from Back to the Future. Who is the president in the future is what Doc asks Marty to check whether he is indeed from the future, which is a terrible way of checking that. In a chilling thought, the future they need to get back to is 41 years in our past, while the future they travel to is 11 years in our past. And if that didn't make any sense, go watch that classic franchise. By the way, the couple's therapist that Ted and his wife went to that advised Ted to give some space to his wife was the guy that ended up dating her. And as Jamie is particularly annoying in this episode, let's talk about him. The most obvious inspiration for his character is fellow Mancunian, working-class lad with the right foot kissed from God, David Beckham. But that's where the parallels end. Beckham was a Manchester United product, whereas Jamie's from Man City, and Beckham was a right midfielder, and certainly not the prolific striker that Jamie is. Moreover, Jamie is a bit of a ladies' man, whereas Beckham settled into family life pretty quickly. Another footballer that Jamie resembles is former Man City midfielder Jake Grealish. But really, that's mostly the haircut. I guess Jamie is his own person. His growth during the seasons is one of the most enjoyable storylines. And as to the accent, Phil Dunster grew up in Reading, and he definitely doesn't sound like Jamie in real life. The accent is Mancunian, and according to Dunster, he was inspired by his friend and agent who is a sassy Mancunian, as well as radio producer Dave Masterman, complaining about the price of a sandwich in Amsterdam. Oh, and Phil Dunster can presumably do an American accent, as he has also portrayed on the stage Curly from another Oklahoma revival. And that's it from me for this episode. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking or subscribing. As always, thanks for watching.